No, dude, you cannot be as big as me. I swear to God, I haven't worn glasses all my life. It's just since I live in it. And Jeff has worn glasses all his life. And I'm like, really? Do you? He comes home from work. I don't even know how they see it. It's like he licks them. And then puts them on to work.
And they're all blurry.
I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, Jeff, the toilet goes over there. They can only hear you if you push. It's a push to talk.
It's push to mute.
Yeah, but it's very sensitive, so,
It's push to mute, right?
yeah, it's push to mute, but unless you're both,
Yeah, so if
Pushing
I
the
push
mute,
this
it's gonna
one,
come
you
on.
can hear me on that one.
yeah.
I appreciate Jeff fitting us in. I know he's gotta be swamped to come do that.
There's a lot of work out there. Of course, there's not a lot of contractors.
So I felt bad, you know, so you can bring the truck to those spots. I said, "Yeah, I can deal with it. I said, "Yeah, truck." So I apologize to him. He says, "Well, she can hold it." That's what I should take it up.
I thought you were gonna break into a song.
I know, right? We can do that. That's karaoke night. Did you get the memo? Did you get my email back?
I did, I still don't know how to get on, but I know it's operator error at this
Okay,
point.
after the meeting, just before we leave, if I don't cover it here on this meeting, which I'll do. Just have questions, I'll make sure you know.
Yep.
It's a disgrace.
There we go.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go. And one more here. I promised I'd do this. With George. Meeting. You got it. Minutes. Boy, started the pages at the end of the day. All right. Nothing sad that summer's still here. Okay. Okay, this meeting will be called to order. Welcome to the Town of Lyman Ordinance Review Committee meeting for September 7th, 2023. Just a quick footnote. My job, if I'm doing it right, is to keep the meeting flowing. Give everybody an opportunity to speak when necessary. If you need to speak and somebody else is talking, just raise your hand. I'll do my best to make sure I see you and give you a chance to speak. Try to avoid any crosstalk, or crosstalk is when two people are talking while somebody else is speaking to the committee. Just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and streamed on YouTube and will be on the town website once completed. So can we stand then and do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I popped in a new agenda item here. Probably a good idea considering it's been a few weeks since we met. Adoption of agenda. So everybody's got a copy of the agenda. Is there anything that anybody has to share that might change the order of the agenda as it's currently printed, or something certainly pressing to discuss before we get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of what we gotta get done? I don't know if you have some stuff.
We have to backtrack to 1.4.1. I was given that homework, not at the last meeting, but the meeting before.
Yep.
To look at all of the references for the statutes in that section. I did check them all out, and they are all still relevant to this.
Okay,
And I think it's fine the way it's written. The only thing I changed was we had said we were gonna bulletize them or put them in a list. So that's what I did, and that's what I passed out.
okay, sorry, thank you. Nope, you got it. Yep, and not only that, but I think there was a bunch of sections that we elected to skip over because our esteemed code enforcement officer was ill. Thank you for getting well again and being back with us. But yeah, there was a bunch of items that we tabled just because we felt we really needed you here. So but we'll definitely cover that one.
And there was one other thing that I was gonna suggest was, because I was not here at the last meeting, I could not hear, and I know we have the mics now, but when I watched it on YouTube, I could not hear Joe at all. And,
Yep.
you know, you guys have some pretty good input, so, you know, if either speak louder or come to the mic or pass it around.
Yeah, so I brought that up to Lindsay when I was here for that training today, and that, thank you. If anybody has to speak, feel free to either grab it and go sit down, or just pass it to somebody that's speaking, or just come up to the microphone and speak like that. Just so, again, I totally agree. We would definitely want to capture what you guys had to say on the recording. It's important, and I'm sure the town's people that are watching want to hear as well. So if you don't mind doing that. If I don't see you doing that, I'll just kindly ask that you grab the microphone and come up. No worries. Anything else from anybody? You got a copy of the minutes and okay. Any other proposed changes to the order of the agenda? Okay. Reading and approval of minutes from the last meeting. Dave, you got a copy? Do you want to read it?
No,
We all have a
I
copy to
don't
read
want to
through,
read
but
it.
it seems a little lengthy.
Everybody's got a copy of it, they can read it.
Everybody would take
I
a-
wasn't here, so I can't even vote on it, so.
Yep, no worries. If everybody could just take a moment, committee members, and just scan through it, see anything glaring. George isn't here tonight, no, he's not. He was the one that was voted in as secretary, as you'll read, to take notes.
That's why I didn't come tonight.
Right, he's not gonna make that
We
mistake
scared him
twice.
away.
I'll make a motion to accept as written.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion?
A second.
Oh, she already seconded it, but yeah, okay, no discussion on, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried, thank you. Okay. The one thing I added in here, and hate to keep handing out show and tell documents, but
George.
There he is.
thank you. I kind of typed this up because I want to briefly go over this. When I say briefly, praying that doesn't take up the entire.
Cheers, George.
Yeah, you want to come in up here?
Come up here, George.
Oh, there he is.
You go, sir. How do you want me to go?
Is that-
That's all it is.
Yeah. Funny. So. George a sec.
What's that?
On the minutes.
Yep, you did a good job. Thank you.
Bad for you.
Here you go, George. All right, I believe it was either the last meeting or the meeting before last, we actually had a resident send an email out concerning their concern about what they, and I'm using their terms, which I'm familiar with, lack of a standard operating procedure or SOP around how the town handles electronic documents. And he also mentioned document control, which is, kind of go part and parcel with hey, how are you guys going to manage documents? So to cut to the chase, I'm going to dare say that right now the town doesn't have, at least not one that I'm aware of, a standard operating procedure or a document control procedure that kind of delineates or dictates how committees and otherwise would handle electronic copies of documents, or documents in general for that matter. And that's a separate item that can be, suggested to the, we got our select board advisor here taking notes. And that's, obviously I think anybody would agree those are two great things to have and probably necessary, especially considering the fact that we're using an electronic copy of a document to take edits that we vote on. And we want to make sure that that electronic copy or copies of that document are accessible to the person making the edits, accessible to the committee members for purposes of reviewing it and making sure that we're getting it correct, and then secure and able to be retrieved as necessary. So until this committee is told otherwise by a higher authority, I just wanted to briefly describe what we're doing, because I think there was a lot of confusion, and I understand why it's confusing because there's a lot of Google things in play here. But I'll just say up front, this does work. It's not the only way to do it, but it's the way we're doing it right now until told otherwise. So basically, Brenda and Julie, combination of you both, they provided us with an electronic copy of the ordinances we're going to review. So we're doing the zoning ordinance right now. Dave being the secretary, it was voted he took on the task of editing the electronic copy based on our discussion and votes. And he's doing that on his personal computer. There's a reason for that. But regardless, he has the duty to protect that copy, but also make a backup copy, which you told me earlier when I chatted with you on the phone that he has a backup copy. So Dave's in charge of making the edits and keeping his copy current. Whenever he makes edits based on what was voted on, he's going to send a copy of that to me, and I'm going to make that available to people. I'm going to store a copy of that on a Google Drive. Okay, and Google Drive is, a lot of people are familiar with that. It's like a cloud-based repository. Now, the Google Drive that I'm using is actually my own personal Google Drive, and I'm only sharing out documents that I'm deeming shareable to the committee. You can't obviously see any of my other documents in there, not that there's anything interesting in there, but it's just, my point is it's on my personal Google Drive for now. That can be replaced with a town-based Google Drive or a cloud-based solution if one comes about, but for now, I'm fine with it being on mine. And then I'm going to share that document. So Google Drive is one thing, that's a cloud-based repository. I'm going to share that document out using Google Docs, which is separate from Google Drive. And Google Docs is a platform that makes it handy to share documents to everybody, because I can basically right-click on the document and say, share this in Google Docs to whomever I want. I share it out to the Lyman ORC at googlegroups.com. We'll talk about that in a second. And then everybody that's a part of that distribution list gets the email with a link that says, click on this and you'll be able to see this document. Purposely, I set the permissions for this ordinance document that Dave gave me a copy of to allow committee members to view the document, download it, and print it, okay? But you can't edit the copy that's on my Google Drive, right? So definitely want people to be able to, hey, might be getting on a plane, going someplace, I'll download it and I'll review it on the plane. No reason why people can't do that. Make notes for the next meeting, whatever. And then, and I mentioned, I'm sharing that out to the Lyman ORC at googlegroups.com. Google Groups is yet another part of Google they make available to people. And that's a service that basically allows you, among other things, to create email distribution lists. So Peggy took that on earlier and she created that Lyman ORC at googlegroups.com. And then we went in and added everybody's personal email addresses to that group. But the group itself has an email address, and you just send it to that email address, everybody gets a copy. Okay, so that's how that works. And you can even play with other things like nobody gets to see what everybody's personal emails are, not that everybody in this group cares. There's all kinds of things you can set up with that. So from a Google perspective, you got Google Drive, Google Docs, and Google Groups in play here. And this is how we're going to manage this until, again, a better process comes about because it works. Again, not the only way to do it, but I think it provides what we need, gives a level of security that I think is adequate for now, and allows people to participate in the process. Okay. If anybody has any additional questions about how each part works, and I think you had some, Dave, certainly right after the meeting, get with me. I'll sit down. I'll do my best to figure out what it is you need to know additionally and get you squared away on that. Okay.
I do have one question.
Absolutely.
When you delete something, will it show the strike? And when you add something, will it show
Yes.
the underline?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And that you touched on one thing I would have forgotten to mention, but I'm glad you reminded me. So when I share the document out in Google Docs, a lot of people in this room, if not everybody, is familiar with Microsoft Word and there's other word editing programs, but Google Docs is its own editor. Word, it's its own Microsoft Word type editor. It's not Microsoft Word, it's Google Docs, and there's a difference. And I think Peggy can speak towards the Charter Commission, Jessica can speak towards all things are not equal. Google Docs is not necessarily equal to Microsoft Word. You can take a Google Doc and open it up in Word or convert it or whatever, but some things might get lost in formatting and whatnot. And that, I'm sure there's ways to work around that. And once you get it into Word, which is the final form that we will get it into before we submit it and say, we're done for whenever we get that line in the sand. And it's in a Word document. Everybody's looked at it and said, yep, this is what we voted on. And then it'll get submitted until we get around to doing this again at a theater near you next year. So, but Google Docs is different and it does show strikes and edits and whatnot. I just want to make sure that people are clear that what you see that I shared out to you in your email is not like a Word document. It's a Google Docs document. Make sense? Okay. All right. So like I said, I just wanted to make sure we cleared that air because I think there was still some confusion and I just wanted to make sure that there was at least some level of clarity. So and if anybody thinks that any of this they might be missing a really big point, let me know and we'll make adjustments. Dave?
There's a major caveat here, and I talked to Brenda about this afternoon. The copy that I was given to use is not the latest copy.
Yep.
And I'm going to continue to use this.
Yep.
But there's going to be a real problem if we come to the end because it's not going to be, the purpose of the way we're doing it is so that when we come to the end, we can take that document and make it the document.
Yep. Good point.
Well, it's not, if you look at what I'm sending out and what he sent out, and you look at your town ordinance here, the format is different, the page numbers are different.
Right.
The words are pretty much the same, but they're not the same.
Right.
And
So let's address that right now. Because that's
sooner or later, somebody has to get me a current copy in Word of the zoning ordinance.
So that's what Brenda or I'll say Julie, I talked to Julie about that today.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And my understanding was, I think there's two things that she needs to do. One is there's a title page that's in one document right now. There's a table of contents that's in another document. And then there's the body content in yet another document. So the first thing is for Julie to make sure that the one that has the body of the ordinance is the current copy that you're talking about, number one. And number two, once she's got that, she's going to take the table of contents that's in the other document, merge it into that, and then she's going to take the title page, merge it into that. So it's one document with a title page, a table of contents, and the body of the most approved version of the ordinance that we have. And then I stressed the importance of trying to get that completed ASAP, so that because you think about it, we're gonna have to take that copy of the document and go back and make the edits we already.
Yeah, that's not a problem. If we don't get too far ahead, I'll just go
Right.
ahead and do it.
And she understands that, and she said absolutely, she's working on that right now. She said she probably may even have it ready today, but
Yeah.
she must have run into something, so she's on it. And we'll get that, and then once we have that, then I agree, now we're working with a valid copy of what we need to, and the rest flows. So, good point, thank you for bringing that up. Anybody else? Don?
Just one question. I got a document from Peggy today, and it said you had to apply for a code or something.
No, it says that I just had to share it with you.
Oh,
So I just clicked share. You should have received an email back.
I didn't look at it a second time. Was busy doing something else.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think.
No worries.
I just wanted to ask though, of the committee members, who is and who is not Google people, if you will, Google friendly?
I still use Windows 7.
Okay, good.
You're not under
But
arrest
everybody
yet.
else,
I'm not Google friendly.
I'm not Google friendly.
I mean, I could learn, but right now I can't use it. I don't.
Well, the reason I ask that is because if you're not in the Lyman ORC Google group and.
So I'm in there because I got his email.
Everybody's in it.
Everybody can see you can see those documents in the Google group.
I get my wife to pull them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll take that
As
as
long
a
as we
yes.
can all see them, I'm
Yeah.
good, I'm happy.
That's the whole time is have issues with these tech.
Windows 7 don't have Google.
And that's actually another good point is, one of the advantages of using Google Docs is it's kind of agnostic to, like, you don't have to have Microsoft Word. And because Google Docs is coming to you, you don't have to install Google Docs as an application on your PC or iPad or whatever you're using. It's a web-based product, so you can inherently get to it on any platform because it's Google. And it's web-based and cloud-based. So that's one of the advantages. The only disadvantage is, it looks similar to Microsoft Word, but again, it's not Microsoft Word. And that's why I'm okay with Dave, because he's been tagged with the responsibility of making edits. If he's more comfortable doing it on his PC in Word, that's okay, because I'll just take it and replace the last edited copy with the new one he just gave me, which should contain all those edits. I'm not adding to the document that I've already stored on Google Drive and shared out.
So it converts over without a problem.
It converts over, yes.
Because the first set of changes that I sent out, I
Yep.
sent out in Adobe and PDF. And
Yeah, I would. just
that
send
way
it-
it's going to look exactly like what I have. If I don't know if the Google
and that's
Doc's
fine.
going to look exactly.
Well, let's you and I take that one offline and do a little
Okay,
test.
we'll talk
because
about that.
I
Yeah.
know what you're getting
Because
at.
I don't have a bit of problem sending out a PDF.
Yeah, and I would say it this way, Dave, if sending it as a PDF and me putting it on Google Docs and saving it out that way ends up looking exactly as you send it to me in Google Docs, all for it. If you send it to me in Word and I put it in Google Docs and it starts changing stuff that make it a little more complicated to read through, I would say I like the PDF version better. And again, the purpose is just to get it to people so they can look at it, print it and copy it and make notes for the next meeting. And because there's going to be a time where, as we're making these edits, and you and I talked about this today, Brenda, that section numbers are going to get kind of skewed a little bit. And that's okay, because the final version, we're going to make sure everything lines up and table of contents lines up with the section numbers and whatnot. Not that hard to do in Microsoft Word once you get it to where you need to be. But I'm not as concerned about that yet as I am about making sure that the wording is correct, with the exception of those paragraphs that we change or sections that we change that reference other sections. We'll have to make sure that those all line up at the end, but.
Mike, I found, when I started working with the Word doc for that, I think it's 6.6.1, that was changed last August, so I had to go and put that in there to bring it up. Over the years, people that have been working with the document have used different formatting styles. So sometimes when you add something, it changes all the numbers, or,
Right.
so, and that's what we really gotta pay attention to going forward. Myself, I'd like to take out formatting styles, so that doesn't happen. I can put in my 1 point, space, whatever myself, then I
Right.
know it's not gonna change.
Yep, and that's certainly up for discussion and consideration, whatever makes sense. And again, I think it's a fair statement to say that the ordinances are here for a lot of good reasons, but arguably, your position has to live the ordinance and make sure that it gets enforced. So, I would kind of look at you with a filter of sorts to say, hey, does this make Brenda's life easier? Because something in the ordinance, she gets getting inundated with week after week because it's just wrong in the ordinance. Like, those are the things that we want to make sure work, for you down the road, so.
I will bring that to your attention.
And speaking of that, one other thing is we got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of material to get through. I think the obvious things that we can understand now is that we're never going to get through, probably even likely, even this ordinance before we run into the Mason-Dixon line of cutoff date to say we have to get these changes done and submitted, per the process we talked about at a few meetings ago. And because of that, I think there are some items that we're dealing with here that probably can be done in what I'll say parallel. And I think I mentioned this earlier, like we have a list of grammatical errors and typos and whatnot. I'm totally cool and offer myself up, and anybody else that wants to come in on a Saturday, upcoming Saturday, with Brenda or whoever else has those suggested changes. And we can take a printed copy of the last edits and say, this is going to change, it's a typo. Get those to, vote on them, get those to Dave, and Dave makes those edits. Like, I don't think we have to wait until we get to that section to make that typo change. We can do those quick and easy ones and note them and get them in there now. Even if it affects a section that we vote completely gets taken out of the ordinance, one little minor thing isn't gonna, kill us on that part, so. Good.
But if we're gonna rewrite it, what good does it do to change the grammar on something that we're gonna rewrite? I mean, we've rewritten a lot here so far.
Because, well, here's my argument for that instead of against it. There's bound to be sections in there, probably more than we know, that we're not gonna change, or we're gonna just, last meeting, we voted to keep several of them as noted currently. And there's also a stronger chance that whatever sections that we do modify aren't going to be grammatically related. It's going to be adding words or taking away words. So, like, to me, the typos and stuff like that, even if we got rid of that typo or the corrected version in a future meeting, if it only took us one Saturday to get through all of those typos and get them done, then at least I know if we don't get the chance to get to any of the other ones, at least those other typos will get corrected in the sections of the ordinance that we never even got a chance to get to because we ran out of time. Follow me? That's my argument for it.
If you're doing it in a Word, there's an easy way of fixing the typos and the misspellings. You just hit spell check.
Well,
And
that would
grammar
make me, but see, that would make me a little bit nervous because that also can do grammar checks. And
Yeah, I know.
if you change a word or words in an ordinance and now somebody says, well, that changes the intent, even if it's a grammatical change, like, I think that's a little dangerous for us to do on that. I agree, a typo spell check would do it, but I'd rather us not use that feature or those features of Word and just go through the typos that we know that have been identified first. We can decide if we want to do that later. Yes?
We did do that in charter. We just took it out and we had our grammar police, Dawn, Jess, and Michelle. They just got together on a Saturday.
Like, you didn't do it electronically, you just did it by visual.
They got together and they said, let's, knock out the grammar. And it's so much easier because it slows you up.
Right.
It just slows you up.
I
And
was in charge of nitpicks.
he was. And he was
Good man
really
for that
good
job,
at
Dawn.
it.
Gonna say that out loud. Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, I don't think we need to vote on anything like that. Like I said, I'm willing to throw my name into the hat to, figure out from Brenda when she's available. And even if it's not on a Saturday or another night during the week, just let me know. I can come in, and anybody else that's available, we'll do it as a workshop. And I think it's just a quicker way to get some stuff that's easy to do. And then, consequently, I think it's pretty fair to say that we have some sections of the ordinance that, whether you call them hot topics or stuff that we definitely want to make sure that we copy or address rather. I think it's probably a good idea that we could work in parallel in that too. Like, I'm going to throw out a swear word here, zoning, contract zoning. That might be something that we tackle, not necessarily when we get to it in the ordinance. I think we are anyways here pretty soon.
We already passed it.
We skipped it because, Brenda wasn't here. But something similar to that might be like, well, it's probably towards the end of the ordinance. It's probably a good chance we're not going to get to it, but it's a hot topic because Brenda has to deal with it today, almost every week. maybe we take a vote, or we all agree as a committee rather, to say, hey, we're gonna tackle that because that's important for Brenda. And, that's gonna take time away from going over this section of the ordinance, but it's probably a better idea. So something to think about. Yep, go ahead.
One other thing that goes along with the edits, as I was watching the last YouTube, I noticed that we've been talking a lot here and there about definitions as well.
Yes.
And I think that we should have one person that says, every time we say that's gonna be a definition, that's gonna be a definition, let's not let the definition slow us up.
Right.
One person just writes down, okay, we're gonna add this, we'll go to the back, if it's not there at the end.
Right.
If it's not there, we'll put the definition in, but one person keep track of every word that we say, that's gonna be in definitions, that's gonna be in definitions.
Yeah, and that's a good way to approach it, Peggy. I like that, because you can say, this needs a definition.
Right,
We don't have to decide right there what the definition
We
is.
don't.
We want to have a separate workshop to decide what the
Exactly.
definition is. Come on in. Let's just do
exactly,
it.
and we'll put it in at
That's,
the end.
that's another great example of where we could just kind of work in parallel and not have to be serial. David?
I'll do that. I just started it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Anybody else have anything? Okay. All right. Thank you. So that being said, we're ready to resume our discussion. Dave?
As I said, I passed out the first revisions. We agreed that we're gonna approve them at a following meeting. Do you want to do it at this meeting, or do you want to put it off until we have a package of them to do?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would say for a couple of reasons. One being, we had a lot of relevant, we skipped over a lot of sections because Brenda was sick, she wasn't here.
I'm just talking about the first page.
Yep, no, I get it. Why don't we agree collectively that the next meeting, we're gonna vote on those edits plus any we come up with today, and we'll vote on those edits collectively at that meeting.
Okay.
Does that sound like a fair deal?
Fine with me.
That, yeah, what you're gonna talk about right now.
Right, but that page that you're talking about, whether we voted it on, this is gonna go in that page, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put it in and then vote on it, right?
Yep.
All right.
And that's what, that was what I'm getting at, is
Yeah.
let's discuss that, make sure that it gets into the edits, and then next meeting,
Yeah.
we'll vote on that.
Because we're gonna have issues like that, because a lot of these, we've skipped things, and they're gonna come back, so, I mean, I don't know how are we gonna wait until we come back, until we approve the whole thing?
Right.
Or are we gonna approve it up ahead? I mean,
I think you guys can, speak up if you want to do it differently, but, my only thought process in making sure that we vote on the edits that you did was just to make sure that, human error, Dave's, trying to get something done and something got missed and he didn't pick it up. Somebody else picks it up and says, hey, we did vote to change that to this. It just didn't get in the edited format. That was it was almost like a second set of eyes to look at it. It wasn't so much of a vote to say,
well, no, I think it needs to be a vote,
well, let me put it in a different
unless
way.
we wait until the end, and then we can have a
No,
big argument
let me
about it.
explain, Dave. We voted to make the change and we decided what the change was going to be at that meeting. And then you go and put it into the edited document. What I'm saying is the thought process is to take those edits and have everybody, it's almost like we review the minutes and see if there's anything wrong with the minutes. Same idea. Just look at all the edits that you made and say, did we miss anything? Does that look right? More of a cross check for you. So like if you happen to miss something, can happen. We catch it. That was the only reason why I'm saying it. It's not like a revote on something we already voted. It's just kind of like, maybe we don't even call it a vote. We just look at the edits that you did that I share out, right? I'm going to share those out. Everybody has a chance to look at those and download them and print them out before the next meeting. Does everything that we voted on look correct? Yep. Okay, great. Come into the meeting. We'll do a quick check-in. Did anybody see anything wrong with
And
Dave's
are you
edits?
gonna document that and somehow,
Document what?
that everybody agreed that it's correct?
Yeah, because it's going to be part of the meeting. It's
But
going to
it
be in
won't
the
be a
agenda.
vote.
What?
It won't be a vote, though.
You voted on it.
Does-
It'll
Yeah.
just be a consensus.
But it was voted on in the meeting.
So let's,
Everything
I
that
know.
was changed was voted.
Yeah, and let's just cut the mustard and say, does everybody think that we need to vote on that coming back after everybody's had a chance to, or just a review and an acknowledgement that everything looks good?
That.
Secondary? Anybody in favor of the first option to vote on it every meeting?
Are you saying that all the changes that we're gonna make?
No, what?
He's saying, that Dave is saying that the changes he makes, we're gonna all look at them and vote on them.
as a
on the
block.
stuff that we already voted on in the meeting.
Yeah, so we make changes and we vote on those individual changes to each section, and then Dave takes those changes that we voted on, puts them into the edited copy. And what we're saying is, the next meeting, after he gives me those edits, I'm gonna share them out to you guys, plenty of time before the next meeting. You have an opportunity to look at that. We come into the next meeting, the question is, do we vote on the edits that Dave did? Yep, they look good, I vote yes. Or do we just have everybody look at that and say, nobody had a problem with what Dave edited? And that's what we're just trying to establish here. Do we vote on it, or do we just look at it and everybody speaks up to that problem?
Can I defer to Joe? Joe, what parliamentary procedure? What would you say on that?
I'm sorry. I would suggest that at the beginning, go over, as Mike used as an analogy, going over the minutes, going over the previous edits, agreed, vote on it. And then,
Okay,
Dave makes the.
because we do vote on the minutes, so I think it's fair. You know, Dave's question's fair, and I just don't want to do something that everybody deems unnecessary, but I'm totally fine with, we treat it like minutes.
Right.
These are the edits.
That'd be fine.
Everybody has a chance to, like, the only thing is, as this gets longer, I'm not gonna print out copies for everybody. You have an opportunity to print it out yourself. Yes,
I think I agree with that. I would say from what you were talking about, we ought to reverse the process. Come to a consensus here, then Dave makes the edit, and then we vote on the final product.
which is kind of what, so,
Don't,
okay. I
we
see
shouldn't
what
vote
you're
on it
saying.
twice.
Gotcha.
Vote on it,
I see what you're saying.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and I like that.
come to a consensus, he makes the edit, we vote on the final product.
I agree with that. I just don't agree with the voting on the block. I think we should take the line item, vote on it, take the line item, vote on it, and just hit each one that way. Just in case somebody's really not sure of what they're voting on, we can either get an explanation or we can explain.
Well, that happens when we go over it the first time. You want to go over it again the
No,
second
he's
time?
just saying, he'd rather vote on it in the beginning and then just review the edits that you
Oh,
made.
well,
not
that's,
vote on
I
it.
mean, I don't care.
We only vote
I just
once.
want to know what I'm doing.
We still only vote once. George?
Well, they're just, when we're having our meeting.
Yeah.
And we're reviewing the ordinances, we're voting on
We have
each
that.
ordinance
Line
step by
Right.
step. So presumably, the minutes will reflect what we all agreed upon.
Right.
What we need to then do is look at a final copy.
Right.
Approve.
And the changes should reflect the minutes.
Exactly.
So in charter,
Well,
What we
the
did.
minutes are going to be what I do. I'm not going to do what George did unless somebody wants to do that. Because I got it, I'm doing it here. I'm not going to do it both. I'll either do it in the Word document or I'll do it in the minutes, but I won't do both.
I think, I want Peggy to finish her thought process,
Yeah.
or her, what she was saying.
so in charter, person was taking the minutes. We had minutes were accepted, it shows that we voted, so on and so forth. When we got to the end of the document, we projected it up on the wall, we went down through it, everybody agreed, yes, so that we're looking at the document again. We're not just gonna take the whole zoning ordinance and say, oh, it's done.
Right.
We're gonna have to look at all of the stuff all over again.
And you did that at the end of like the line, so to speak, so you get a final review.
So we took votes on decisions of what we wanted to approve or nay to change. As
Ongoing.
we went
As we
ongoing.
went along.
Like
And
we
then
have
at
been
the
doing.
end, we
Yep.
reviewed, I mean, throughout the process, we reviewed the document together. At the end, we did one big final review and voted like, yes, this is the copy.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion that we do exactly that, because there's no sense to reinvent the
I
wheel.
don't know if that was heard.
Yep.
Sorry, I had
Yes.
to stand up.
So basically what Jessica detailed was, as this committee's been doing thus far, we're starting to review each section. We're making motions and voting on those motions ongoing for each section. That's getting recorded in the meeting minutes. And then also secondarily being edited in the copy that you're maintaining.
The copy that I make is going to be an attachment to the minutes.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Fair. And then at the very end, when we get to that date where we can't make any more changes because we have to finish with the rest of the process, we're going to have a meeting where we project on the wall, and we're going to go through that document of all the things that we just approved and make sure that they got edited as we approved them. And there's your final vote on, this is ready to go to
At
the
the
next
end?
step,
Final review.
final review. Say that again?
If we're gonna do it all again the last time, we're gonna be here until,
It's not, we're not doing it all again.
Christmas of
We're just-
25.
We're just reviewing it.
You're just reviewing it now.
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to do it piece by piece, because as we get through, we'll go on to the next piece. And then you wanna do it all over again?
It's just a final review together.
Yeah, it's just a secondary look. And I
All
would
right,
say,
that's
I would say it this way. If you're making the edits that everything was voted on, it's a quick final review.
It is.
That's why I wanted everybody to look at them the next week and say, these are the
No, they
edits.
still can. No, because you're still gonna give me those edits.
I'm gonna
share
attach them to the minutes.
That's fine.
They're gonna be attached to the minutes.
That's okay. I'm still gonna take that thing and I'm gonna share those out so people can see them. I don't care if it's a separate document or part of the minutes. I just want people to have the opportunity to see what we talked about and discussed and voted on. And then they can come with their questions or concerns or something glaring that was wrong at the next meeting. But at the end of it, we are gonna take a final vote on, this looks good, we're ready to send this off, nothing changed. And one motion, one vote, and it's done.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, we got a first and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay,
Now, would you restate that motion?
that we're
We
going
said it
to,
3 times already.
that's okay.
Okay.
We're gonna review the sections and make.
I'm
motions.
gonna revise the document.
Yep.
Okay.
With appropriate motions and votes for changes.
Yeah, during the meeting.
During the meeting,
Yep, okay.
with the intent of a final review.
And then I'm gonna put it together and I'm gonna attach it to the minutes. I'm
Fine.
gonna attach the revisions to the minutes.
Yep.
For the next meeting.
Yep, and then we're gonna do a final review of what we intend to submit to the.
No,
select
let's
board.
not, yeah, that's way
Okay.
ahead, okay?
Yep.
I'm gonna attach it to the minutes. And when we approve the minutes, we're gonna approve that. Correct? And then
I
we're
see
gonna
what
do
you're
it
saying now.
at the end again.
Your minutes should just reflect your vote.
The minutes are gonna reflect the changes because
I think Dave's right. If it's attached to the minutes and we're gonna approve it, we're approving both. I think that's what he's saying.
But the
Sounds
minutes
reasonable.
are reflecting everybody's vote.
no, they
Wait,
don't. The
wait,
minutes are
Dave.
not, I'm not gonna go through every one of these things, like, and even George, he wrote down a lot of them, but he didn't say who voted for what. He didn't say who said what, who
Yep.
voted for what. I don't have enough time to do that
So,
at the meeting.
so wait, let me ask a question, because I think I'm on board with what you're saying. You just want to make sure, what you're going to attach to the minutes is just the sections that we,
Just the section we talked about the week before, the
is
meeting
that going to be
before.
cumulative or just?
Nope, it's gonna be that. If we do page 3 and 4, I'm attached 3 and 4 as revised.
All right.
And everybody's gonna look at it and say, yeah, that's what we decided on, or that's not what we decided on, and then we approve the minutes or disapprove.
Fine.
And then it's gone, and then
Yep.
we go to the next page.
Yep, and so as I understand what you're saying, and I think I do, I'm fine with that, but I still think we need to do a final.
I don't have a problem with the final
Review.
review. We can put it up on the wall, and we
Okay.
can have a party here and do it. It'll only take us 6-7 hours to go through 80 pages.
So my motion, because you asked what my motion.
Okay, I'm trying to finalize it now, okay? It's gonna be attached to the minutes.
Yep.
And approved with the minutes.
Yep. And the second
And then
part,
you're gonna have a final review
at the appropriate time.
at the appropriate time.
For the committee vote. I'm gonna put a little asterisk next to this, because I'm all about us getting our work done and not about getting hung up on details. If what we're doing doesn't work, we're gonna have a new motion to change what we're doing and do it a different way that's more efficient. I'm not saying it's gonna be inefficient, Dave, I'm just saying, I'm okay with trying that, and I understand your reasons for wanting to do that.
Okay, you made the motion
Yeah, I made the motion, Peggy.
and
Seconded
Peggy
it.
second.
So I'm okay with doing that, but I, like I said, if we get hung up on details, every time we go to approve the minutes, there's another full-length discussion about something that was in there, which there shouldn't be, but if there is, we're gonna change the process. Fair enough? Okay. All right, you got it, you got what you need?
Yep.
Okay. you want to start with the section that you had to do for homework?
I don't think there's much other than just saying exactly as I said, that
You want to just
section.
review again, because it's been a little bit.
Sure, so the section 1.4.1, it talks about the authority of the zoning ordinance. And, basically my homework was just to check those statutes and make sure that we're referencing all the appropriate ones. And I did indeed do that. I shared this document in our Google group that basically references each one of those bulleted items that I put on this sheet, it's exactly as written. The only thing that I changed was I took the A out, and I don't think that we need the MRSA
Excuse me,
in.
Judge didn't get a copy?
Oh,
So you can
sure,
follow
right
up?
here, I got an extra. I do, yeah. The main revised statutes, and then it's main revised statutes annotated. And the only difference is one, you're just referencing the statute, and the other one, you're referencing the annotated version of that, which is all the edits and all that stuff. So, you know, if we're sending somebody to that statute, they don't really need to read all the annotations to it. Just read the statute and you're fine. So I did do that and I rewrote it. I assume that we're still, the numbers, I wasn't sure, but I think it is still 1.4.1. And then I just put each one of them separate, A, B, C, D, and E.
Yep.
But they are all appropriately
George?
referenced.
Is it MRSA or MRS?
MRS.
MRS,
Okay, so that it got changed?
yes.
The what?
She just explained why, because the A just stands for annotated. So there's no sense to, you know, if
Okay,
you're gonna look at simplicity.
But it's MRSA. So usually it says, the last one, or the one that we have in here, says Title 30A of MRSA.
Right.
And I just took the A off the MRS.
Because it's not required.
Because it's not required to read all the annotations for this reference.
Right. What somebody would rule on would be the MRS.
Right, the
Version.
statute is.
Right. The annotations just show you what changed and if you're
Right.
interested in
And
that.
that what
You
was
go look them up
voted
separately,
on
right.
and so on and so forth.
Exactly. Does that make sense, George?
you know, the lawyers have covered that.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, I think the lawyers are primarily concerned with MRS says, and, you know, whatever comments and changes they make goes into the MSRA version. Right.
You took out MRS.
Joe?
Would you like to?
Oh, can you,
I did, yes.
sorry.
Just under the, these are in absolutely proper order. Maybe specify the main state constitution.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Plug in there.
You're right.
as opposed to the US.
Yep, instead of just the Constitution, but also, Lee just pointed out that I left out on, Dave, this is gonna be for you because, Dave, you're the one that's gonna be putting this in, I assume, but on, where was it, Lee? Title 30 on D. It
D?
says D on my form.
Okay,
It
yeah.
says Title 30A, Section 4312. I left out in between there the MRS.
Should be, where should the
Yeah, it
MRS
should
go?
say Title A.
Yeah.
MRS.
Okay, MRS.
Yeah, Section 4312.
Between the 30A and section.
Right.
Correct.
Then you're gonna add in main state
And
constitution.
add in the main.
Yeah, Main State up top. Yep, I get that.
State of Maine or Maine State? I don't know. Proper.
Main state or state of Maine?
Main state.
Main state.
Just out of curiosity, does E need the same thing, or is that something different?
He doesn't have it in the original.
It wasn't
I
in
agree
the
with you.
original, but I don't.
One would think it would have to be the same, right?
Yeah.
Title 30A,
And I
MRS,
think it- yeah,
section 4351.
Right, because the one before it was references
We're gonna
in
add that one in too, I guess. Right.
Where are you?
just for consistency.
On E,
On E.
E, okay,
gonna read Title 30-A, MRS, section.
I got it.
Any other edits?
The one thing I talked to you about today was, doing the gender reference.
Yeah, you want to refresh everybody on that one?
So the human rights thing we did in charter, basically, instead of saying wherever it says select men, we referenced select board or the board instead of saying men.
And is that, so we're saying we're gonna adopt that principle throughout the general edits that we review?
You gonna make that a motion?
What's that?
You making that a motion?
I mean, we can make it a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion that we change all the gender references to board, select board instead of select men. And that way it just matches our charter, really.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second it. Any discussion? I have one question. Are you making reference to just that one word and changing it, or any other word that might have a gender reference to it and then deciding what that needs to be?
We only did that reference in charter.
It was brilliant, the way it
State
was.
statute, that's where I have my hat.
Yep. We
Okay.
just said it, made Human Rights Commission kind of thing, you know, we were like, let's just do it, because that was the thing to do for the statute.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else?
But we do have a beautiful select woman here, so.
Yeah.
That's the right thing to do.
That's right.
That's it for me, buddy.
Thank you. So do we want to go back? And so now we did that one that Peggy was assigned to take a look at. There were some other ones that we skipped over because, again, Brenda was sick and wasn't available. Do we want, which one do we want to go back and discuss?
Oh,
Coffee.
Page 2.
Page 2. Contract zoning, is that where we're going?
Yeah. We're on contract only.
7.1.
1.7.
Jump right into the lines then.
1.7. Yeah, this one, yeah, that was what we thought.
Those are the changes. We should be
So
looking-
contract zoning was the first thing that was tabled last meeting,
Yes.
so.
Yes, so let's get to contract zoning.
Okay.
183, contract zoning. I'm just gonna throw it out there that I think what I might suspect might be one proposal is, do we even need contract zoning in our ordinance or not? So we could get brave and put a motion out there to remove contract zoning altogether. But I'm sure there's discussion on that. So, Dave.
I just have a couple of, so that was passed in 2015. I don't have the data on how many registered voters there were, but in 2022, we had 3,148 registered voters. And 1 year later, 2023, we had 3,830, which is an increase of 682 voters. When it was passed, 387 votes were cast. It was 187 to 159.
Wow.
The difference was 28.
Okay, and actually, to add to that data, Brenda, how many entities are using contract zoning today? Is it 3?
I think we have the 3. We have R&R, Funky Bowl, and then on Hill Road.
R&R, Funky Bow, and
There's the
the meadery on Hill Road, whatever that name was again. Yeah, so we got 3. So there's 3, and then plus the stats that Dave just gave us. What other discussion?
I'd like to hear Brenda's thoughts and views on
And could you use the microphone? Sorry. I know.
it. Just take in some of them.
Yeah, the microphone's movable.
Yeah. Just grab it and sit down, please.
Not the whole thing.
I would appreciate it.
Just pull it right off of there.
Okay.
And make sure it's on. make sure it doesn't shut off.
Get her one of the lapel ones. Just turn on.
Okay,
Like her up.
Okay,
and
so,
close, sorry,
Speak into it.
speak into it.
okay, so where I'm coming from is in the very first sentence. And it says all of those events may be inadequate to promote desirable growth. The comprehensive plan is the governing document for, supposed to be, for everything that happens in this town. So if there's something that exists that isn't working right, then change the comprehensive plan. By putting this in here, there's a couple of things. It can be very subjective, and I think it waters down your ordinance. If the comprehensive plan felt, and your ordinance came from that, felt that a use wasn't desirable in a particular zone for whatever reason, that was the reason for that. So 5 people can put something in that zone that the comprehensive plan didn't approve of, or didn't recognize, or didn't address, and it waters down your ordinance. And I'd like to give you another example. I got a call from a realtor about a piece of property over on Walker Road. It's for sale. Very, very, very interested buyer wants to know for sure that a particular use couldn't happen around her. And I said, well, that zone doesn't allow you to do that. But the town has contract zone. May never happen, probably would never happen, but it's a possibility.
But you can't guarantee that it won't.
I can't guarantee it. So, that is important to some people, evidently. And I just feel like you've got a good ordinance, and yes, we're here to make it better, but it's a workable ordinance, and I can't see over the years that there's been a lot of changes, which means it's a working document. There's not a lot of appeals going to zoning board of appeals, which shows that you've got a good document. It's not tested all the time. So I feel contract zoning, and in the reading that I've been doing all over the state, and this is really quite new, all over the state, code officials don't like it for those reasons. So if this, and I think one of the biggest things that we can do as a group is look at that land use chart. Dawn went through a really arduous, and the planning board meeting last night, because the land use chart didn't give us any direction at all. And it didn't help out at all. They had to really tweak it and really do some wiggle room, so we knew that the land use chart's the problem. So let's fix that based on your comprehensive plan, and eliminate contract zoning. I'm just asking you. And it's like if a property has entered into contract zoning, and the planning board looks at a possible contract zoning request and what it will do, what it won't do, maybe impose a few conditions on it, it's the selectmen's contract. They're the ones that vote on it in the end.
Right.
And if a property has been granted a contract zoning, when that property owner is gone, that contract is gone. And I know that it's recorded at York County, it should be picked up, people should know it, there should be no reason why they would buy a property thinking that they've got, a great beer event facility only to find out, no, you didn't, it's gone. The minute you sign that paper, it's gone. So I just think that leaves too many possible problems for what it's doing. And I don't know what it's doing myself. So that's where I'm at with that.
So, can I ask one question? You mentioned when the property owner's gone, but that could also be if they close the business, for example, right? Like, I'm just throwing it out there. If Funky Bow just said, hey, I don't want to brew anymore.
Right.
So he's not going to run it, but he still owns the property. but somebody else wants to run the business instead of him.
I don't think the planning board's going to like that.
Well, I don't know, like I'm asking, what's allowed and what's not allowed? Is he gonna be saying, well, I still own the property, somebody just wants to operate it for me? I don't know how that's written.
No, that property owner agreed to this contract. This is a contract.
Mhm.
This isn't a site plan review, it's a contract. So your next person may not agree to that, or may not understand what they're signing, or may say, no, I'm not gonna do that. It's a nightmare for me and possibly for the planning board.
Peggy? Oh, sorry, I'll get to you in a second, Ron.
I just want to understand though, contract zoning, the contract goes away when the property owner sells that property. I don't understand why that is. There's gonna be a reason, because I mean, I want to start a business on this piece of property. I go through the arduous task of getting that contract zone. Isn't the purpose of starting a business and owning a business to be able to grow your business and sell your business? So if you sell your business, you're selling what? If you don't have that property, you can't sell the buildings, you can't sell the land. You're selling what? A customer base?
I don't want to sound heartless, but you're putting a business in a zone that your comprehensive plan isn't conducive to that use, for whatever reason. If you want to start a business that you're gonna build up equity, the last thing you wanna do is put it in a zone that it doesn't belong in and get a contract on it. I think that wouldn't be good business policy at all. So if building up the equity is important to you, then you need to establish that business in the right zone.
Is it possible to talk about that with extending commercial? If we take away contract zoning, can we extend our commercial?
That would be a separate discussion, which I agree, there's a possibility, but let's stick with contracts only for now, but I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Roger, you had your hand up.
I'm not going to make a motion, we just eliminate the contract zone.
Before we do that, hold that motion for a second, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to understand, so it's a contract between the individual, and the individual knows that he's growing this business, he's investing income, and if something happens, now, in one of the three places, unfortunately, if the individual should pass, at that minute, so if something happened on a Wednesday, Funky Bow could not open on Thursday. It's done, and that's what happens.
But yeah, the contract becomes.
That's not saying that Funky Bow's heir can't go to the planning board and say, you gotta admit this has been doing great for years, we've been a good neighbor, it's been successful. The planning board could jump on board and say, you're absolutely right, you're going to vote to recommend to the selectmen that they bring that forward. So there are ways.
Can you create a contract in perpetuity though?
No, not currently.
Not according to this.
One more part to that question.
Right.
If we vote to eliminate it, these three are grandfathered.
Yep.
But if the owner passes,
Or sells the property.
or sells the property, it ends, but if the owner passes, heirs cannot then approach the select board to continue
I think that's something you have to decide. How you-
because contract zoning,
One
Is
second,
gone.
1 second, Don. Okay, I just want to make sure I give people a chance to, George, you had your hand up.
no, I just want to know how does that work, or has that not been addressed?
But, and I think that if you were to eliminate this, you're going to have a section in here that's also going to define how you're going to handle the three that are in existence.
Existing.
You know? Right.
Well, they would continue under the person that
Is it
made the
grandfathered?
contract, but then there's no more contract zoning. It's like giving up the use of the property for a year. You can no longer go back. And I mean, yeah, that would definitely have to be addressed. But as Dave points out, some of these things were passed with very little input from the town. I mean, the vote may have been, 20 or 30 people
Right.
out of a base of over 3,000.
Are you going to speak directly to what he's talking about? Before, I want to give George a chance, but
Well, the only thing I would say is that would be a legal question. I would suggest it would go to a lawyer, because the contract's supposed to end with the owner and it's supposed to come back and get it renewed. But if we don't have contract zoning in there, but I don't think that's necessarily a reason to keep contract zoning, because basically contract zoning as currently written allows you to put any use in any zone. I say again, any use in any zone, because there's those magic 4 words in there, but not limited to.
Right.
So you can come in with any kind of a use that you would never want, but in theory, it could be passed and voted on by, hopefully the select board wouldn't, but it could be passed and voted on by the select board, and a contract could be issued.
And then
So-
issues that related to any changes in ownership or death or whatever from an existing grandfathered contract zone could be mitigated and handled in other ways, maybe possibly including guidance from town council and whatnot. So it's not like, I think what you're pointing out, Brenda, is, to answer your question, is if somebody dies, the property transfers ownership, there are alternate ways that potential use could continue, but there's going to be a process to follow for that. But any net new contract zone would not be established because we removed it. Well, hold on one second, Lee. George, you had a hand up.
I just wanted to say, I was on the comprehensive planning committee. I was the chair for that. We were approached by the former code enforcement officer to include contract zoning in our comprehensive plan after the fact. As you all know, I used to run a wedding facility at our farm. One of our customers was one of the top litigious lawyers in Boston. I quizzed him about contract zoning because I wanted to know what the impact, what the liability for the town of Lyman would be if they passed contract zoning. He said, we always outspend them and we get whatever we want. The nature of contract zoning, when you grant, I mean, I feel bad for R&R Oil or any of these other guys. You look at what he's doing, he's spending money there. And his only recourse, if we say you can't do that anymore, is going to be to lawyer up. And I think that would be an unfortunate scenario to continue for the town of Lyman. And that's just the way I feel about it.
Continue in the form of the more contracts you have.
Continue to offer contract zoning.
Okay. Lee, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and again, I need to be educated on this. We're talking about a sole proprietor here. Well, what about a corporation? Because that gets into perpetuity.
I don't think there's anything that says a corporation can't.
Because a corporation is not an individual. So again, if the CEO passes on, that contract can keep going for the life of the corporation.
You can't.
Dawn?
The only reason to have contract zoning is to somehow give some discretion to the zoning ordinance. But I see, that's the only reason. I think it was helpful for Funky Bow because they were, as I remember, they're on two zones, residential and general purpose. So it enabled them to become, I would say, legal, if you want to look at that, under the town zoning ordinance, to have a contract that covered their business. The other two went through the process, followed the procedure, et cetera, made the application, it was voted in. But I would just also say that the problem with the doggone, no offense, but I was on the comprehensive plan committee also. A lot of things are listed in here to be done by the planning board, the ORC, the board of selectmen, et cetera, but nothing gets done because people are busy doing other things. And that's the problem with the comprehensive plan. And it has a lot of the general words that Brenda's talking about, but it's just getting into specifics. I mean, what should happen is the land use table should be reviewed and let's say updated to, maybe they need to be more realistic or whatever. But basically contract zoning as currently written right now allows you to put anything, I say again, anything in any place in town if you can get someone to approve a contract.
So what's really here,
We really ought to get rid of the darn thing.
what's really here on the table, let me try to summarize it, see if this sounds correct. Anybody would agree to. we want to remove contract zoning as it's currently written and established in the zoning ordinance, because we feel we can provide the same benefits of the good parts of contract zoning by doing it in other ways through land use and other, initiatives that the town would have. So it's not an effort to take contract zoning out of our ordinance. It's not an effort to thwart people like Funky Bow or the Meadery or R&R Oil from being able to do business in Lyman. We want to encourage that. There's just better ways to encourage that than the way contract zoning is currently worded in the ordinance, and those were provided. Dave?
No, I don't think that's true. The reason for contract zoning is to allow in a particular zone that doesn't allow something to do something that's within another zone. For instance, that's what Funky Bow wanted to run a business out of a residential zone. So he came in and got contract zoning. It's not that we can take care of it with a land use table, or unless we just combine all the land use tables and allow everything to happen everywhere.
Okay, so.
Am I right?
One correction on that, Dave,
Okay.
is that right now the contract zoning is currently written has the 4 words in there, but not limited to, which means in theory, I'm not saying what happened in theory, any use, whether it's allowed at any place in town at all. Say you come up with some really bad use to, anyway, whatever, pick a use. I always had one, but I won't mention it. But in any case, that you want to put in town, it's not listed anywhere in our ordinance, but in theory, if everybody voted for it, that use could be permitted in town somewhere. I mean, you can make a case on it, but really contract zoning is, right now, is an open door.
Is it an open door just because of those 4 words?
Well,
Or is there other parameters of the current contract zoning ordinance, or the part of the ordinance that makes it a free for
The
all?
4 words right now.
those 4 words make it the open door, but there's an issue with that, the 4 words, because the state uses almost exactly the same wording as we do, but does not have those 4 words in it.
Exactly.
So if somebody wanted to go to court and appeal a ruling that said, okay, but not limited to, what you're doing here is you're allowing the town ordinance to be more lenient than the state ordinance, and that's not allowed.
Right.
So I believe if somebody took it to court, the but not limited to would be out the window. So, I mean, that's the reason that they wanted to change it in the beginning. I mean, I agree that that should come out of there no matter what we do.
At a minimum. Peggy?
Well, just what Don was saying about land use tracts and stuff, and back to what I was saying about, changing the zones and, maybe making commercial bigger. I do agree that's for a different time for a talk, but I'm not sure that I would want to vote to eliminate contract zoning before I knew if we were gonna change our land use table and or change our districts. I think that, we really need to talk about that before we say, or me personally, before I would vote to eliminate contract zoning.
So here's a question. Let's say Funky Bow didn't exist today. He comes in next week and wants to do that. And contract zoning isn't in our ordinance. What's his method to get a brewery started off of 35 in a residential district?
I don't think there is any method.
There isn't a method. Right?
Well,
What if
I take it back
our-
because there was a method, and he did start it before contract zoning. It was a family business. And he had a family business, and you can run a family business in a residential zone.
I can permit home occupation.
Yes, and he was.
But it's very
Okay.
limited.
That's how he started. And then he wanted to expand, and then he found out he had to go to contract. That's what happened.
Because the expansion required that, or because now it's not? a family
Once it
business?
wasn't a home business anymore, it's like you can have only more than like 1 or 2 employees outside the family.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
he had,
Multiple drivers and stuff.
and so that's what happened.
It is very limited, but for a reason. and
Right.
I'm from the outside. I don't come from Lyman. And I've worked in several towns in a similar capacity to what I'm working now. And Lyman has done a wonderful job of keeping its village integrity. And I think it's, the planning over the years, comprehensive plan, zoning and all of that. You've got your commercial on 111 and up on Route 5. Nobody here knows it's there. It doesn't bother anybody. It's where it should be. And I just, I tip my hat to the fact that Lyman has kept that integrity. And I think that's why it's so, you don't know how many new homes I'm writing. It's just, they're coming. So,
So there's another proposal then. Well, I think Roger didn't quite get a chance yet to make a motion, but before you do, Roger, I'm gonna make a suggestion. We could, for now, just vote to take those 4 words that cause a lot of problems and put us in heat with the state, the way the state writes it. We could vote to take that out of this ordinance right now, with an agreement that we got time, we can come back and revisit it if we need to, if there's something else comes up between that. So we could do that to take out the big sore spot right now. And the other part of that is, I think, I don't think anybody in this room would disagree that, if I'm like R&R Oil and I want to do a business and Lyman's a good place to do that, I'd love to be in my home if I could, town. Within the parameters of what I'm allowed to do, in the area that I'm allowed to do it, that's what makes America great. So there ought to be opportunity there, again, within the parameters of what you're allowed to do. And if contract zoning allows for that, but there's parameters in there that make it more difficult to manage, because then it becomes a free-for-all. And I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but I know Funky Bow's added some services to their stuff, and that's good for them. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. But what if it became a bad thing for the residents? If you wanted to open up a stage for a bigger stage for bigger performances and stuff like that, which might be a great idea, but maybe not a great idea for some of the neighbors, as an example. So, or the meadery wants to now do something else that's related to meadery, but is going to increase a lot of traffic and stuff. Well, today they pretty much be allowed to do it because of those 4 words, more or less.
Right? Whatever the contract says.
Yeah.
I mean, the contract's a legal document, so it should say what they're allowed.
And other uses as permitted.
It should say that. I don't call
So,
it.
is there anything else other than those 4 words, which we all collectively agree they're bad? Is there anything else in contract zoning as it's written right now in section 1.8.3 that's problematic to the town, or we think it's going to be problematic, and we need to address as well at a minimum?
Unfortunately, I don't think I brought my the brilliant wording that the planning board voted on and approved, or whatever it had public hearings on, but we basically, if you go onto page 4, under recommendation, this is under contract zoning, and I have the wording at home, but I'm sorry I don't have it here, but I should have brought it. But we took out, for example, is for land of an unusual nature or location. I think we took that out because that was on the 3 contract zoning applications that the planning board, actually there's 4 I think we worked on. That wording was hard to define. Unusual nature or location, and we added, I think, some wording that said it had to be a value to the town as a whole or something like that. And I'm sorry I didn't have the exact wording, but basically modified that a little bit. And we definitely took out on part 3 there, is consistent with, we took out those words, but not limited to. So in other words, we said, okay, it has to be, this contract use has to be an existing or permanent use within some zoning district in the town, some zoning district. So if you're going to ask for it in residential, it would have to be a use that would be approved for either, say, commercial or general purpose in the town. It just couldn't be some, adult strip club or something, which we don't have anywhere in our ordinance that you want to put in for entertainment, because that's not a listed use. I don't know, I hope it isn't a listed use that you can construe under something. you see what I'm trying to say there? So there's a couple of other minor changes there.
Yep.
Not minor, but they didn't get to the voters, so.
Can Peggy reiterate her objection to removing?
Entirely, you mean?
Removing
I
entirely.
just said that I don't think I would be ready to vote on removing contract zoning until we spoke about our other districts. Are we going to change our land use chart? Are we gonna change our districts at all? And I just think that I'd rather wait to know what we're doing with that before I said,
Should we
let's
just
just
maybe
get rid of it.
table this now until we do?
I mean, we could, but I still would be in favor of taking out the things that I think if we all collectively agree that there's some parts of it that can be changed out, there's no sense in not voting on that part now, and just at a minimum, if we forget or run out of time, we have those edits in there, and at least that's gonna provide a lot of relief. Roger.
Why don't we just move to the land use table in the zoning map, go through those two, and come back to this? And that way there, everybody would be comfortable whether we're gonna vote to keep it or not keep it. That would be to move us forward. Right now, we seem to be stuck.
Dave?
I'm gonna give Matt's issue here. If we do something as drastic as eliminating contract zoning totally, it should be a separate issue, because we don't want to lose everything because somebody doesn't vote on that one. So I believe that we should make the changes and then have an alternative. We can say, if we decide that we would like to take it out, it should be a separate issue in the warrant. So we revise this one the way we think it should be revised.
Yep.
And I believe it should be revised because it doesn't match the state statute.
Okay.
And so there's a problem with it. So it should be revised. We revise it, and then we have option 2, which we have to still vote on. We haven't voted on it yet.
Right.
To remove it in entirety. And that should be a separate warrant item.
Based on other information.
And to talk about there's nothing that we're gonna do with the land use tables that's gonna make anybody feel any better about having or not having contract zoning. Because I'm sure we're not gonna take the stuff that's in commercial and move it into residential. And we're not gonna take the stuff out of, in order to do that, you're gonna basically have one land use schedule for the whole town. The reason for contract zoning is to allow somebody with, here, an unusual nature or location. I think that's important because the reason that Funky Bowl got approved is because, yes, he was in a residential zone, but he had a couple of things going for him. He had a large tract of land. He was in an area that he abutted general zoning, and part of his property was in general zoning. And that was at least that's why I voted for him, because he had an unusual situation.
How much of his land was in general purpose?
I forget exactly how much it was, but
Was it over
most of the
50%?
facility is in residential.
Yeah, but was his land mostly in 50%
I
or
don't.
better?
I don't
Because
remember.
if that was the case, it would have been, he would have followed the rules of the general purpose zone anyway.
Right. But I don't think that was the case because it obviously had
Yeah.
a real contract. Brenda, you had your hand up.
Well, I had a couple of things, and I really.
Grab the mic, sorry.
Oh. Okay. So I really, to begin with, if someone approaches me and they want to do a home occupation in their home, I'm not going to approve them doing something that isn't allowed. So, I mean, if someone's in the residential zone and they say that they want to manufacture and sell beer, if it's not allowed in that zone, it's not gonna be a home occupation either. I mean, a home occupation isn't automatically guaranteed. It has to be allowed in that zone. So, you know, I don't agree that a home occupation grew so much that it had to get contract zoning. If it wasn't allowed in that zone, it shouldn't begin with, in my thinking. But I was very interested in Peggy's compromise that maybe not spend a lot of time on this, do the changes that we all know that needs to be made.
Right.
Just in case we never get back to it, or. we
That's
get
what I
bogged down
said, yeah,
something else
exactly.
by, what was it, May 9th, we have to. But
April 4th.
I think that maybe when we get into looking, and the land use table isn't something we're gonna do in 3 minutes.
No, it's
And-
not.
And I'm not, I personally, I have so many ideas on that, and I've been making notes all over the place that I really want to be able to compile that a little better and bring it to a meeting. But I think if we look at the actual zoning and look at the land use table, that's going to open up doors for people that should be able to do certain things without changing the neighborhood, and that's the key. You don't want to change the neighborhood. And Funky Bow is a good neighbor. You never hear anybody complain.
Nope.
So, that's like poster child contract zoning, right? But I agree. Let's really at some point focus on, we talked today of making the commercial zone the whole length of 111. Why not?
Right.
So, things like that I think will make a big difference.
Okay, so here's what I propose. Sounds like we're all kind of heading in the, oh, sorry, Matt?
Just back on Dave's point real quick, isn't some of our recourse here if there are some things, and obviously I don't know that I want to open it up the whole thing, but like looking at the land use table, a bank or a financial institution, it's not in the residential district, and I'm just throwing it out as an example. Can't we change that to site plan review?
I like that.
And then it's somebody else's, it's the planning board's decision at that point, right? And I just throw that one out as an example
The
to
model,
to talk about
Well,
what we
if
can
it's-
do in the land use table.
You got to remember that just because, if you say, okay, it's allowed with site plan review, that doesn't mean that the planning board is going to either deny it or let it happen. They're going to just make sure that it happens the way it's supposed to happen. So they don't get to say, no, you can't have it there. You just have to go through site plan review.
That makes it an allowed use there.
Correct.
Can I make a suggestion on this contract zoning? I apologize, I didn't bring the wording. Could I forward to,
Lyman ORC at Google Groups dot.
the wording that the planning board voted on and sent to the select board 3 times, but it never made it to the ballot? 3 times is probably irrelevant, it's just me saying that. It went 3 times. But in any case, if I could forward that to you, that was the wording that.
Yeah,
was
just
recommended.
send it to the Google email.
I'll try.
I'll write it down for you.
I'll try.
Right now.
Okay. Send it to Peggy and she'll put it on the Google email.
No, we're gonna train Dawn to do it the first time.
I'm just an expert on my 2 fingers.
I know exactly where you're coming from, Don.
Anyhow, but we did a review on it, and came up with a change, and I think there was some wording in there as to why. That would be a suggestion if you want to move on,
Yes.
because this is a controversial issue. It's not the
Yes.
only one.
So here's what I'm hearing. You've got some language that you want us to look at and consider. We have things that we know we probably want to all agree that we want to take out of here. Why don't we, much I hate to say this, why don't we table that to just get discussed at the very first part of the next meeting, once we've had a chance to review what you are going to send. And then we'll make a decision on and vote on what we want to remove from the current contract zoning ordinance that's problematic. And it sounds like we're going to have a plan to potentially, if we have time and opportunity, to revisit it with some updated information, whether it's land use, as Matt, I didn't want to cut you off. Did you want to finish?
No, I did. I just wanted to clarify that the planning board wouldn't have the recourse to say no.
Well, see, that is a problem, because the way the wording is now, there's 4 conditions. The applicant has to meet all 4 conditions. And unfortunately, there's some, I would call them weasel words, but there's words in there that can be interpreted one way or another. And an applicant may say, yes, I think I meet all these 4 conditions. The planning board could vote possibly and say, no, we don't agree on that you meet these conditions. And,
No, but he's not talking about contract zoning.
oh, I'm sorry.
He's talking about
Site plan
taking it
review.
out
Oh,
of,
site plan review.
adding an item under residential, but make it site plan review required. And I told them, just because you put, the planning board doesn't get to say, no, you can't do it. They just make the guy go through the 16 issues and if he does it right, he gets it.
I don't agree, there's 16 standards and they have to meet every one of them.
Yes, I understand it,
And public hearing.
but all they have to do is meet them all.
And if they don't meet them all, they do not.
I understand that, but they will.
Well, anyhow, but the standards are, if it says site plan review, it's an allowed use, step one, which Dave's correct. Got to go through the standards, and it may be that they don't need them. I mean, it depends on what the use is and what the size of it, if it's a business, but it, it depends on the conditions. And also you have a public hearing and your abutters can say, they can come in and say, blah, blah, blah. Just gonna bother me or there's gonna be issues and the planning board is supposed to objectively look and try to use their best judgment to vote as to whether the person meets it or meets it with conditions.
Right, and just going further down that road, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but if TD Bank comes in and wants to put a multi-story building at the end of Grasshopper Lane, that's going to affect traffic. It's an allowed use if we change that, right? It's an allowed use. It goes to site plan review. Site plan review says, no, you can't do it because of the traffic study.
No, they'll have a
there's gonna be-
traffic study and then they say, okay, we'll do what we need to do to fix it.
There's going to be things that
Yeah.
would eliminate bigger projects.
See, there's a reason it's not an allowed use. Once it becomes an
Brendan,
allowed
should we
use,
hand up?
Wait, it says here, if any of the criteria fails to pass, the board shall deny the project. And there are, it doesn't have a adverse impact on significant scenic vistas. That's not something the applicant's going to be able to fix, right? I mean, there are some that just prevent them from
So,
doing that.
has the planning board ever denied something because of somebody failing to meet one of these situations? They always come back and say, oh, I'm going to do this and that's going to satisfy it. There's not a lot of scenic vistas out in front of Grasshopper
That's
Lane.
just an
I
example.
know.
So
I know.
table that for a second, please.
No, I was-
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's,
I was gonna say, Matt, and Don, I think people self-deny because they can't meet the conditions. That's what Brenda's alluding to. So you don't get, boom, stamped, denied. You say, oh, I can't meet the conditions of any of the 16 conditions. I have self-denied my appeal to the planning board for a site plan review.
Right, and just to clarify, my only point was if we eliminate contract zoning, what can we do to broaden the horizons? And pushing things more to site plan review would be a way. Now, I'm not saying that's the right way. I'm just saying, in my mind, that's a right way to do it.
Right.
And I think it's a good way, and if we have a really good land use table, and we've really looked at the different districts and what's the very best for the town, you shouldn't need contract zoning, I wouldn't think.
Right. Dave, did you have a hand up?
No.
Okay, sorry. Thought I saw your name.
And really, Julie and I really they don't just show up at the planning board, they start out with the application, which is 6 pages long,
Right.
and they don't get to the planning board until Julie and I have gone through every item with them.
And I'm sure Brenda a lot of times says, hey, wait, you've got to go get a survey. You have to do this. You have to come up with a site plan. You have to show this. You have to show that. That saves everybody a lot of time. If there is a procedure for an applicant to come and do a preliminary review, to sit down and discuss it before they pay money and blah, 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 and go forward with it. And then if they want to proceed, maybe they have to go spend some money to get a surveyor out or something like that and do some things to come up with their plan to meet the criteria in the zone.
So let's do this. There's been a lot of information provided. There's a lot to take in and absorb. A lot of great suggestions, by the way. And I think it's important to do due diligence on this one because we don't want to squash a resident's ability to have a business and grow it. But we do want to make sure that it's not a business use that could jeopardize what the comprehensive plan says that we want to do. So let's do this. You're going to send us some information that's wording that the planning board approved related to this. You've brought up a good suggestion. We ought to chew on that, marinate on that suggestion. And then why don't we just table the discussion for now until the next meeting and then be ready and plan to make a definitive action on this one way or the other, whether we're just gonna change what we need to in the current wording, but keep it in, until some other better idea comes up that replaces it if necessary or not. And then, just be prepared to, think about that, including like, what we're talking about, like, hey, we can extend the commercial zone all the way down 111, and that's gonna have this benefit. Let's just be prepared to discuss that at the next meeting, so we can get a definitive action one way or the other on this. Is that fair?
And would that be a good time to explore the land use table? Because that's one of those things that I think we need to get on the ballot before a lot of other things.
So that would fall into the category of what we talked about earlier, and I mentioned to you today, which is what's an important thing on Brenda's plate. I want to make sure that we're not, catering is probably not the right word, but addressing concerns that you have, because you have to enforce this stuff. We don't have to do your job, you have to do it, and if it's painful for you, then let's make sure that we can attack that as best we can and get an answer on it. So I agree, that's a good idea. Dave?
And just to reiterate something that Don said before, I think at the last meeting, I wasn't here, but I listened to it on YouTube. It's important to look at the wording under uses, permitted uses, before you even look at the land use table. Because the land use table is based on the permitted uses. So to go through the land use table is kind of a waste of time till you go through the permitted uses. Well,
Well, he's kind of saying that. That's what he's saying. The
I
two
mean,
go hand in hand.
if you get the permitted uses out, then you go to the land use table and just fill in the blanks. Yeah.
All right, everybody get that?
Right now, they don't match.
Yeah, oh, I agree, and that's what and that's one of the big things that needs to happen. But
Are there
the
any-
permitted uses should dictate the table and not the other way around.
Are there any pending contracts that you're aware of?
No.
Okay, great discussion.
Contracts, I didn't know if any.
I can make a motion if you want, but I think we're all in agreement. We're just gonna table this discussion. We're gonna be prepared to come in and do some serious work on getting some action on this one way or the other. Motion? I make a motion that we table this to the next meeting. Dawn's gonna send us some information, and we're gonna review it and be prepared to act on this at the next meeting.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Interest of time. I don't know if anybody has a time limit, but usually we don't try.
8:30.
8:30, okay, good. All right,
The time we adjourned last meeting. right?
8:30, I think
8:30.
8:30.
Huh?
8:30. Is that good we do?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
No,
We're
you
saying
said,
we go to 8:30.
we'll go to 8. I like the way you think.
He's half out the door.
That was kind of motion, that was kind of okay. Yeah. All right, fair enough. What's next in line?
We haven't got nothing done yet.
No.
We table something else.
Yeah, but it's beyond Article 2. You want to go to that, Article 3?
Article 2, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Article 2. Establishment of districts. Table due to lack of relevant attendees. They're here now. There's a bunch on Article 3, or 2. Okay. Who wants to start? I'll go with the trash.
Want to be read?
The first question is, what's the correct spelling of shoreline?
It's one word.
It's in one word.
Depends
we
on, I
did
guess
make
it
it- we
depends
did-
on where
I-
you go, but in ordinances, it's one word.
Yeah, I
State
think I
uses
had a
one
note in
word,
mind
we
that
use
said
one word.
shoreland is one word, and to
Yeah.
combine those together. I think we all agreed on that one last time. Zoning districts, 2.1, 2.11, we just said shoreland is gonna be one word, district, 212, residential district, 213, general purpose district, 214, commercial residential district, and 215, mobile home park overlay district, which again, we've established many times in past meetings. We only have one overlay district, and that's a mobile home park overlay district, not a shoreland overlay district.
Is it just one?
Say that again?
She's asking, is it just one?
I'm pretty sure that I remember there's one up over here in the Howard's gravel pit. That's in pink on our zoning map too.
Oh, you're talking about mobile home district?
But it's just one
There's one
ordinance,
up by
or it's
Dayton.
one
Well,
document that covers both of
But it's
those.
in two places.
Right, but it's in two places, correct?
Where's the pond road showing?
Where?
Pond road.
That, no, this one in here,
I know, but why isn't the pond road showing?
because that was before. Before the overlay.
All right, so is there a question, Peggy? Like, so are we good?
Are you trying to say it should be mobile home park overlay districts?
I think it's.
Well, I think, no, I was just curious, somebody said we only have one mobile home overlay.
I think
You did not get one, sir.
we only have one overlay. I was
Yeah.
at the last meeting, I thought shoreline was an overlay. And
Right,
so we only have one overlay.
which is the mobile home park.
Which is mobile home.
But it can be used in multiple places.
But they're,
Right.
right, okay.
Matter of fact, I think there was one over off of Mast Road, I think, that's not there anymore.
Okay, so 2.1, are we good? No changes?
Yeah, we're changing
I'm
shoreline
sorry,
to
Other
shoreline.
than shoreland to one word, 211. All right, 2.2, location of districts. 221 says, said districts are located and bound as shown on the official zoning map. Oh my gosh, here we go.
Yeah.
Entitled Zoning of Lyman, dated December 6, 2014, and on file in the office of the municipal clerk. So based on the training that we had today, and I hate to bring it up, but is there anything in this wording, Brenda, that we need to be considering that doesn't tie us to a specific piece of paper that opens up the door for the approved zoning map, no matter how it was generated, which we saw today is a really awesome way to generate that map
Right.
in the future. But do we change the wording now that addresses that?
I would like to see it say something more
Yeah, it
like the
definitely
most
has to
recent approved zoning map. Instead of putting a date in there.
And just for the purposes of everybody that probably wasn't at that training or has no idea what the hell we're talking about. So we had Jim Thomas. Jim Thomas came in, and he's contracted with the town to provide us with some GIS data / map. He didn't necessarily produce this one that's the approved one by any stretch of the imagination, but what he did show us today was based on the work that he does for the town and how he does it. The long and the short of it is that he ends up producing the resulting electronic files in a format that can be inputted into other softwares, either to print out a current zoning map, or if you have something on your website that residents can get to click on certain things and see who your neighbors are and stuff like that. Or what he showed us today and did a little bit of training on was using those files to use in Google Earth, where you can see, which I have to agree is pretty damn cool. And if you want to hold up that printout that you printed off, you can use Google Earth to do a lot of that, and super handy. So
we discussed the fact that we actually call this the crayon
the
map.
crayon map,
And that's the map that they're speaking of here.
right?
But to transfer over to this GIS software, my understanding is that it didn't make it to the ballot. It got done beyond that
Yes.
time,
They
the
thought we
last
didn't
time.
have time for public hearings.
We didn't have time for a public hearing or whatever it was, so
Right.
it didn't get approved to use the GIS map. But the GIS maps, as you can see, they're all, you just go to Google Earth and everything gray here is general purpose, everything green is residential. And the map gets updated every so often. And we have to incorporate that language into here that says the official map that previously was updated
Right.
without a date, that gets updated every 6 months or whatever it is.
And as a point of clarification, you can't just go to Google Earth today and see this out on the public web. You have to click on the file that he produces that when you click on it, if you've already installed Google Earth on your PC, would open up Google Earth and present you with this. Because all of this yellow and lines and all that stuff is stuff that he does, and he makes available in a format that Google Earth can pull up and view on your PC.
And this would
And there's
have to, there's a link for this that would go onto the website so that everybody can just click the link and it brings you to this.
Right.
And that is updated. And every so often after it's updated, it is presented for certification.
Right.
And that's on the wall instead of the crayon map.
Right. So the approved map,
Well, who updates it?
he does,
He does.
based on input
Oh,
from,
your files.
911 maps.
correct. Which we done, I think what I heard him say, on an annual basis, you guys get together and,
They do
Or-
it April 1st for commitment automatically.
Yep.
Um,
but there might be situations where, like, if you change the commercial district to be the rest of Route 111, you could go outside of that annual thing and say, hey, we just made a big change and approved it.
Once he
Can you
got
update
voted in, we would just
Right.
tell him about that and he would take care of that for us.
And the cool thing about this part about Google Earth is you can go in, and it's not that hard to figure out. You can turn on and off layers that turn on certain things. And Brenda, you know, as a code enforcement officer, obviously has access. I mean, again, the official copy that is that everybody would reference would be the printed copy we have stamped and approved, right? But you can get the current electronic version of that you want to see, can get pulled up on your own PC or from the town website, just by clicking on that file that he maintains and you guys all approve and whatnot, right?
Exactly, and what it's saying here.
Grab the
for
mic,
some
sorry.
reason- I'm sorry? Oh.
I know. Just want to make sure people can hear you.
For some reason, if we, say we have a new subdivision and we put a new road on the map, that's not what you're voting on when you're voting on that zoning map. You're voting on the zones.
Right.
That's all we need approval for. We don't need
Right.
approval to add a road or, you know, I'm trying to think what else we'd be adding, but it's the zones itself. When you change the zones, that's quite a process.
Right.
So, the changes that Jim puts in here for us is going to be, the new subdivision on Brock Road and the new road over here. It won't be a change in zoning unless it actually gets voted on.
Right.
So what we care about here is the most recent approved zoning map.
Which is agnostic to how that map was created or specific to a printed copy with a date on it. and
It's gonna
whatever.
have to be a copy with a date on it, yes.
It would have, so it's, and what it's saying here is the copy that's in the town clerk's, the municipal clerk's office and was signed, notarized by her and signed by Rod, planning board chair.
Yeah, it has to be a signed copy. I mean, you just can't,
Right.
Yeah, no, I know that. I'm
Yeah.
saying, but
That's notarized.
I guess my question is the wording that's there today specific to this particular one that was
Yes.
produced by a surveyor,
The crayon.
the crayon one? Or does it say, like you, as you're suggesting, it's the current approved signed zoning ordinance map on town?
So as of
Right.
today, it would be the crayon one.
Right.
yeah. Now, I mean, I have no problem with taking, because I mean, I'm hesitant to put in things like dates and that stuff, because every time it changes, you gotta change your ordinance. And,
Right.
and oh, by the way, if you look further on down here, you added a bunch of that in you, but we'll look at it later.
Correct. And I think that's, so the crux of the conversation here, just because of the interest of time, is what do we want to rewrite 221 and what do we want it to say so that it's, Peggy?
I'm gonna suggest that we look at, I mean, Jim does this GIS mapping for many other towns.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna suggest that we look and see how other towns do word that
Reference.
so that we're referencing it properly, the map, and we know that, I mean, because this language is very specific to that map.
Yeah, I mean, it could say, said districts are located and bounded as shown on the latest approved official zoning map, entitled zoning map of Lyman and on file in the office of the municipal clerk.
Which should be town clerk.
Okay, town clerk. I mean, while we're making changes, but I mean, I don't see a problem with that wording. It gives, it makes it generic or not.
Without the date on it, you mean?
Yeah, you don't need a date.
Yeah,
It
okay.
just needs to be the latest approved
Yep.
map that's on file in the town clerk's office.
And just dumb question, I'm sorry, Joe, you had a question. Yeah.
Just modify, approve with town approved.
Official, okay, you can say, but approved is, I mean, it's understood. It's all, anywhere in here, it says the town has to approve it, yeah. So you want to say, let me, okay, what kind of words you like?
Just insert the town in front of approved.
The town approved,
Sub-districts are located without the.
the latest,
Most recent.
the latest town approved official
Zoning map.
entitled zoning map of Lyman, and on file in the office of the town clerk.
Dumb question, is what Jim would produce for the zoning map, is it entitled zoning map?
His is electronic, but you can make it anything you
No, I'm
want. 'Cause
saying
he's gonna have to print it out one time and get it signed.
I'm saying though, is his copy that he's gonna give to us down the road, should this get approved, is it gonna be entitled zoning map of Lyman, those actual words? Or do we need to tell him that's what he needs to name it?
I'll have to make sure that matches.
Yeah, okay, right. Is it important to put zoning map of Lyman in quotes in there?
Right, I think it's looking for a title, and that's the title of that map.
Okay, so then we just have to make sure that whatever he prints out for us is zoning map of Lyman.
Okay, and we'll call it
Yeah,
what we wanted to
We'll
call it.
call it Mickey Mouse's zoning map of,
If
yeah,
that's what you want.
okay.
I'm sorry?
He said, somebody said town clerk,
Right.
town clerk, or so she's bringing up a good point, is it supposed to be town, well, she is the town manager, town
She's a
clerk.
town clerk.
Okay,
I think by state statute, it has to be approved by the town clerk.
okay,
She's the master of.
she's the acting town clerk. George?
I don't have one of these.
In the back of your book,
It's not there.
we'll get you one.
Do you want your own crayons to fill in gaps, or?
Have you made notes?
Actually, that's a pretty good map, because if you read 222, it tells you how to
You want
how to
swap? Have you made
interpret it.
notes or anything?
No, I don't know what's in
Okay,
there.
have you, do you want to swap?
What?
You want to swap?
Just tell me. I don't want to swap books, I'll steal your map.
I use Google Maps, but they're too different.
But it might,
I guess I'm
oh, by that shading, that might be, it's not necessarily that
I
accurate,
know,
but
it's
it's not
not
meant,
crazy. It's
okay, it's not meant to be, this is the
Little
line.
land that was
You know,
being-
well, maybe it's
I'm
not
sure there's a lot of
accurate.
taxes.
It's this, it's just a reference.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're getting there.
yep, anybody, so Dave, you got 221, as we said we wanna,
Thank you.
you wanna
I've
just
got-
reiterate
I have
to us?
221. I just read it. Want me to read it again?
Please,
Okay. Said districts are located and bounded as shown on the latest town-approved official zoning map entitled Zoning Map of Lyman and on file in the office of the town clerk.
perfect. We got a few minutes left. You wanna squeak in 222? Official zoning map is incorporated herein by reference and shall be signed by the municipal clerk and chairman of the planning board at the
Town
time of-
clerk?
Town clerk, by the town clerk and the chairman of the planning board at
You can go 3D.
the time of adoption or amendment of this ordinance, certifying the date of such adoption or amendment. Additional copies of this map may be seen in the municipal town office or municipal office, that doesn't matter, right? Any reason why you can't just call it the town office? Doesn't matter. Potato, potato. All right, any proposed changes to 2.2.2, other than change municipal clerk to town clerk? I see none.
Is that the same with the municipal offices, town offices?
That's what I was asking.
That make it town?
Make it
You want to
town.
make it town?
Just make it
Okay, I
town.
can do that.
I'm a potato guy, not a potato guy. Sorry. Okay. Rather than tackle 2.3 right now, do we have make a motion to end the
Make a
meeting?
motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second it.
You got a second it.
I gotta
Say a second.
He's got a second.
Okay, he's got a second. All in favor? Thank you. Great meeting, guys.
So I don't know if anybody can answer this, where R&R oil is currently, what is that zone?